Is the name Alex Osborne familiar to you? How about the book Applied Imagination? Do you know the term brainstorming? Let me connect the dots here. Alex Osborne was one of the founding partners of an advertising firm, Batten, Barton, Durstein, and Osborne. You can imagine in advertising there's a great need for creative thinking. And Alex Osborne developed methods to bring about creative thinking in a deliberate way. You see, he didn't want to leave creativity to chance. And he was sometimes disappointed by the inability to apply imagination on the part of his employees. So he experimented with different methods. One of those methods was brainstorming. In his book, Applied Imagination, he introduced this tool, brainstorming, as well as creative problem solving. You see, he was the originator of creative problem solving, the process we're learning in this course. So brainstorming has literally gone all around the world. Many people have heard of brainstorming. When I ask audiences how many have heard of brainstorming or participating in brainstorming sessions, most hands go up. The first organized ideation sessions using brainstorming took place back in 1938. So this tool's been well diffused, but often it's poorly understood. Here are some misnomers about brainstorming. Some people believe it's just a BS session where you're just going to have chit-chat and idle discussion. In some cases, in brainstorming sessions, the first good idea that's struck upon, the group runs with and begins to implement. Many individuals don't know that there are rules to a brainstorming session. Others see brainstorming as a panacea. It's often talked about as if it were the full creative process instead of one tool within the creative process. And often people neglect the fact that a brainstorming session needs to be facilitated. In this lecture, we examine brainstorming. We examine brainstorming being done well. Let's remember where we are in the creative problem-solving process. We've gone through the clarify step, where we've identified a goal, a wish. We've gone through some data, and as a result of that, we've identified a challenge or challenges to work on. We're now in the ideate step. So we have a challenge. Now we need some tentative solutions to address that challenge. In ideate, we think up of lots of options. We explore new combinations, and we build on ideas. We're using the thinking skill of ideational thinking, the ability to produce a variety of original options, images, and thoughts that address our challenges. There's a heavy emphasis on divergent thinking in the ideate step of the creative process. And as a quick reminder, the 4 guidelines for divergent thinking are: first, to suspend judgment. That's the principal guideline. To next, strive for quantity. Try to generate many alternatives. To make connections, cross-fertilize ideas, and then to push for novelty. You can use divergent thinking individually, or you can use it in groups. The benefit of group divergent thinking is that we can stimulate each other's thinking. We discover new perspectives, and there's lots of energy as we listen to others share their ideas. Let's compare a conventional meeting to a brainstorming meeting. In a conventional meeting where we're looking for ideas, an idea is suggested and it's often immediately evaluated. If it's acceptable, we run off and implement. If it's rejected, we wait for another idea to come out. Now, there's some consequences with this kind of a meeting. First of all, we suggest an idea only if it's good. It's risky unless we believe it's a good idea. So there's a lot of evaluation that happens in our minds before we share the idea. Another consequence of this kind of a meeting is we attack or defend. Ideas are under attack, or we defend our ideas. And we're looking to get that home run, to score big. And if we don't, if our idea is not accepted, we might withdraw. Now, in a brainstorming meeting, it looks and feels quite different from that traditional meeting that I just described. In a brainstorming meeting, we follow the rules to divergent thinking. We're applying the divergent thinking guidelines as a group. So ideas are suggested, multiple ideas, many alternatives, and they're recorded in public view, which makes it easier to build off of those ideas. We ensure evaluation is deferred, that it's suspended temporarily. And then when we've generated many alternatives and we're satisfied that we've got a sufficient array of options to play with, then when we converge, then we use evaluation. Let me share an example of a brainstorming session with you. Pacific Power and Light faced a problem. In fact, the linemen who worked for Pacific Power and Light faced a very dangerous problem. In the fall and the spring, ice storms would come through the Northwest, and the power lines would end up having freezing rain. Over time, as the weight built up, these power lines ran the risk of collapsing. Linemen would have to go out, and they would have to climb the poles and knock the ice off of these power lines. As you can see, this would be very dangerous. So they began to run brainstorming sessions to address this problem. A couple of hours into the session, the participants took a break. While they were on break, there were a couple linemen who were talking about some of their experiences, and one retold an experience of running into a bear. Now, it so happened that the individual who was facilitating that meeting heard the lineman tell this story. And so when the facilitator restarted the brainstorming session, the facilitator asked that individual to tell the story about the bear, just to get the creative juices flowing. Well, it did lead to some interesting ideas. Thoughts that occurred after the lineman shared the story were, well, let's train bears to climb the poles. And because of their weight, as they're climbing the pole, it'll shake the pole and the wires and the ice will fall off. Well, that, of course, was met with laughter. And someone suggested, well, maybe if we can't train bears, we could use a helicopter to set a honeypot on top of the pole. And the bears will be interested in the honey and will climb up the poles. And again, they'll shake the power lines and the ice will break off. Well, there was an administrative assistant sitting in that meeting. She was a nurse for a MASH unit. And she recalled running out to the heliport to take injured soldiers into the hospital. And she remembered the downwash from helicopters. And when she heard the idea of putting honeypots on top of the pole using helicopters, she thought, why not fly helicopters over the power lines? Have the downwash vibrate the power lines, and that would probably break up the ice. In fact, this was the solution they pursued, and this was used for many years. So, this is an example of how brainstorming should be run. Let me be clear about a classic brainstorming session and the components of a classic brainstorming session. So in a classic brainstorming session, we have three roles. We have the facilitator, who's there to guide the process, not to give input in terms of the content. We have the client, who brings the challenge to the group and who is also responsible for evaluating the ideas afterwards and deciding which ones to take forward. And then we have the resource group members who are there to bring diversity in thought, to engage in divergent thinking, and to help provide the client with many ideas and many options. So let's bring our team together. I'll be facilitating the meeting from San Francisco, but we're going to bring in great thinkers from all around the world to help us with this challenge. Our first resource group member is Andrew from Siberia.
Hi, Gerard. I'm the centrifugal flow engineer.
Super. We have Michael from Merida in the Yucatan.
Hi, I'm a senior product designer.
And we have Gretchen all the way from Melbourne.
Hello, Vice President of Marketing.
And Derek, who's in Alaska.
Hi, Gerard. I'm a materials acquisition specialist.
Trish from London.
Hi, I'm the Director of Sales.
And finally, some of you know Scott. He's our client. He's coming in from Rome.
Executive Vice President.
Great. Now, Scott, we've gathered a wonderful resource group here for you, individuals who are extremely good at divergent thinking, and our goal is to help you to get a lot of ideas for how to improve the bathtub. Now, guys, when we go through this process, we're generating ideas, and we want to give Scott as many ideas as possible. In order to do that, I'm going to give you some rules to follow. The first rule is we're going to suspend evaluation. We're not going to judge our own thinking. If you have an idea, go ahead and say it. Don't block it. And we're also going to defer judgment on other people's ideas as they're generating and sharing their ideas. We're going to strive for quantity to make sure that Scott walks away with plenty of options. Third, we're going to make connections, listen to each other, and see if we can build off of each other's ideas. And then finally, we really want to open up new thinking. Where might we go? What are our blue sky ideas around what we can do with the bathtub? Now, before we do physical exercise, we stretch. We're going to be doing some mental work, so let's do some mental stretching. I'm going to give you a fun problem to work on. Imagine we had a huge overrun of paper clips. Let's just take a minute. What are all the other uses you can think of for this overrun of paper clips? What do you have? What might we do?
You could string them together and hang your child's artwork off of them.
Mm-hmm.
Or turn them into jewelry.
Mm-hmm. What else?
Create modern artwork.
Mm-hmm.
You could use them as pushpins.
Mm-hmm.
You could use them as picture holders.
Good. Let's keep it going. We're thinking divergently. What else?
Lanyards or maybe even eyeglass repair.
Mm-hmm.
If you made them oversized, you could do you could use them for bookmarks.
Mm-hmm.
You could melt it down and use the metal for something else.
Nice. Okay, I'll tell you what. You guys look like you got a sense for how to do divergent thinking. I think we're in a place now where we're ready to help Scott out. Now, you've seen the brief, you've seen the data. Our challenge statement is, how might we improve the bathtub? We're going to keep the same guidelines in mind now as we work on this real issue. And I'll just remind you of the most important guideline, which is to suspend evaluation. So let's go ahead. Let's get started. Let's see how many ideas we can come up with for Scott. Let's go.
Maybe we could use different types of materials, granites, quartz, exotic types of rocks.
I like the idea of ready access to different fragrances, oils, things like that in the tub.
Mm-hmm.
Customized colors and shapes to match your bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
I really think if we put our minds to it, we could design a non-clogging drain.
What else?
Right, and actually something like that in the jacuzzis, some way that you can have some kind of a detergent run through the jacuzzis to keep them clean.
Nice. I like how you built on that idea. Anything else? What else do you have?
What if we had an automatic shut-off for the water level?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe we could even have a multimedia station connected to the tub, or waterproof internet access or keyboard.
Mm-hmm. Let's keep it going, guys. What else?
Yeah, we could have video screens even built into the walls.
Mm-hmm. The ideas are being transcribed. If you need some springboards, just glance at your screen. There's a small screen that's capturing the ideas as they're coming up. What else do you have?
Well, I mean, on that note, why not have like a small TV tray or some place to put food, drink, or books without them getting wet?
Good. I like how you made a connection there. What else?
Some way that the surface that you're resting on in the tub could be conformed to whatever body position you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And something that would keep the water warm while you're taking a bath.
Good. Let's push for some more, guys. What else do you have?
Adjustable height, so it would make it easier for people to get into the bathtub.
Mm-hmm.
We could even have elevated versions where you could have storage underneath.
Mm-hmm.
You could actually, if you could adjust the height, maybe also adjust the width so that you make it smaller for children and wider if you wanted to have more than one person in it.
Mm-hmm.
Built in a security system so the water doesn't overflow.
Let's push for a few more.
What if we even thought about different types of water, salt water, like being in the ocean?
And the ability to tuck the tub away in some fashion when you aren't using it.
Well, we're going to continue to work on this, but let me just check with Scott. We will have future sessions. Scott, how's this going for you? How do you feel about these initial ideas that we've generated?
It's a fantastic first start. I'm really looking forward to getting the team together again to help flesh out some more of these ideas.
Super. Thanks, Scott. We appreciate that feedback. We're going to continue to generate ideas on this challenge of how to improve the bathtub. But before we had virtual conferencing, we had to actually get together. So let's do that. Let's bring the team together. Great. Wonderful to see you guys. We're going to continue to work on this problem because it's a serious issue, and we've got some ideas, but we're going to push for even more. This time, we're not going to do the brainstorming as we did it before, classic brainstorming. Instead, we're going to use a tool called Brainstorming with Post-its. Now, the way that works is that each of you has a large Post-it pad and a large marker to work with. You're going to record your own ideas. You're going to jot your idea on that Post-it. So after you've written your idea and you said it out loud, you can go ahead and hand it to me, and I'll place it on a flip chart. So let's go ahead. Let's get started. What ideas do you have to improve the bathtub?
I could have a massage unit in it besides the jacuzzis.
Thank you.
It could be portable and inflatable.
Thanks, Derek.
What if you had a simulated waterfall in it?
Thanks, Andrew.
What if we started a bubble bath of the month club to keep people taking more baths?
Okay, thanks, Gretchen.
And automated self-cleaning.
All right, let's keep going. What else can we do? We're striving for quantity.
Integrated lights into the tub.
Candle holders are actually a part of the setup of the tub.
All right.
How about a bubble dispenser that's built in?
And what else can we do?
Adjustable shapes and size.
Retractable containers that can keep your washcloths and soaps.
How about a longer tub so you don't have to have your knees out of the water?
What if you could get custom art on the surface of the tub?
What if we had springs at the bottom of the bathtubs?
Okay. Springs.
Could you come up with some sort of washable marker design that you could put on the walls of the tub that washes off?
Okay, washable marker design and springs on the tub. If you run out of ideas, we've got some toys on the table. You can play with manipulatives. I see Michael's doing that already. That might help us to generate some further ideas if you start to run dry. What else do you have?
How about just, toys, tub toys? Some that come with it when you purchase the tub, something like that.
Sure, tub toys that come with the tub.
And somehow they're integrated into the design of it.
If you had a way to have it almost like you're in a moving stream of water, like it kept cycling through.
Moving stream of water.
Could you maybe use suction cups to make it easier to store things or put them on the wall?
Suction cups. Did you get that from that toy in front of you? Yeah. Nice. Yeah, you can make connections like that.
I
What
was
else?
thinking about built-in pillows, some softer areas within the bathtub.
Okay, built-in pillow, softer areas.
And actually, if you had older folks using the tub, emergency buttons in case they needed help.
Okay.
How about a built-in aquarium?
Built-in aquarium. Yeah.
Well, on the note of the elderly emergency button, why not have a baby monitor installed for the kids?
Baby monitor. I like how you're making connections.
How about a wine cooler?
Wine cooler. Nice.
What if the surface of the tub would change colors depending on the temperature?
Okay, let's keep going. What else do you have?
Colors, lights, how about tanning lights inside the bathtub?
Tanning lights.
We market outdoor bathtubs?
We're holding off evaluation, so anything goes.
Could you have some sort of air blow dryer system after, so you wouldn't have to use towels?
What else could we do? We're not restricting ourselves to budget or what's physically possible. We're trying to break the old paradigm. Remember, we're trying to get a real range here so that we have more options to choose from.
If you could have the jets, you could adjust them to different places. Maybe they're on a track or something like that, so you could have them adjustable jets.
Yep. Think about times you've been frustrated in the bathtub. What did you wish you had, or what do you wish was different?
A built-in fountain within the bathtub.
Built-in fountain within the bathtub.
Maybe there could be a back that you could adjust so with your shaving, you could be up, but when you're relaxing, you could lean back.
Okay. Yeah. What else could we do? What can we make bigger, larger, smaller, get rid of, combine?
Is there any way we could come up with maybe an aquatic office chair that you could put in your bathtub in case you want to get business done while you're in your shower?
Yeah, aquatic chair in the tub.
And actually something along the same lines, some desk-like format that you could do over the tub for reading and for if you wanted to work and relax in the tub.
Nice, good, good. Guys are on a roll. Again, think in terms of what we could eliminate, take away, what we might combine to it. What technologies might we adapt into a tub?
The faucet, sometimes that gets in the way. If there is some other way, like below the surface, that the water could just shoot in instead of having to have that big faucet banging your head or your knees on.
Or maybe the faucet could retract after you've done with it.
Good, good. I like how you did a build.
Also, an improved draining system that would drain the tub almost instantly.
Thanks, Michael.
More of a fancy artistic take. We could have designer legs for the tub. You know, lion's feet.
Is there any way to continue to build off of that? How might we bring artistic, aesthetic features
Yeah, it
in?
could get very ornate. They could be, have like a Gothic kind of curl to the edges. I mean, have a Victorian look to them or something very futuristic. So the outside could be really imaginative.
Let's go ahead and capture that. Continuing along that line, any other builds on aesthetics?
Well,
Aesthetics, arts, what does that make you think of?
this might be kind of weird, but could you put wheels on the bottom of the tub, make it mobile?
We're suspending evaluation, so go ahead and get it down. Yeah, we're not judging these, we're just trying to get them out.
Actually, even the materials, we talked about materials before, but, mosaic designs on the outside of the tub instead of just the porcelain outside.
Or maybe we could have like magnetic panels that could be decorative, could be art or different colors.
Well, let's play with that. How might we substitute materials? What other materials might we think of that we could replace besides the current materials we're using? Any other materials you can think of?
A material that would adjust to the shape of your body.
Okay, tell you what, let's do this. Let's switch to another tool. This tool is called Brainwriting. It's a silent form of idea generation. The way that Brainwriting works is that each participant in the team gets a sheet of paper, a brainwriting form. And on this sheet of paper, there are 3 columns and 3 rows. There's a blank sheet in the center of the table. Each person silently writes 3 ideas across the first row. When they're done, to encourage cross-fertilization, they then take their sheet, his or her sheet, and they swap it with the sheet that's in the center, and they continue to do this. Now, as they move along, as they take the sheet out of the center, they look at ideas that have already been written on that sheet, and they see if they can build on those ideas. Or if they can't, then they continue to add new ideas. But the goal is every time 3 more ideas, either builds or new ideas. So guys, let's try this out. Everyone needs a copy of this brainwriting form. So 1 copy each. I'm going to place 1 extra copy in the center. If you would just write all across the top so remember what we're working on. The challenge is how might we improve the bathtub? So why don't we go ahead and get started. The advantage of the brainwriting tool is that sometimes you may have a vocal person who dominates a discussion. And brainwriting allows for reflection, silent idea generation. In a way, if you have that dominant person, it sort of neutralizes that effect. Brainwriting also, because people are working independently, tends to generate more ideas. When you're using brainstorming with Post-its, or you're doing classic brainstorming, you have to wait and listen to each other speak. Sometimes while you're waiting, you're shutting down your thinking because you're listening to someone else. As we look at brainwriting, one of the other advantages of brainwriting is that people tend to have more elaborate ideas because they do have time to reflect. And of course, we have the benefit of the fact that as they take a sheet and they read it, they still are able to connect to other people's ideas. They're still able to use other people's ideas as stimulants, as springboards to their thinking. So guys, how are we doing? You have some ideas, some more ideas for improving the bathtub? Right. Yeah, good. I'll tell you what, I'll collect these. I'll also take the ideas that we generated using the Post-its. We're going to have all of this transcribed. We're going to give them to Scott. Scott's then going to go through the converging phase of the process, where he's going to go through and do hits and cluster and see which ideas seem most promising to carry forward into the process. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate you coming along and helping us out, acting as resource group members. But for now, you're done. Thanks so much. So what would happen next after we've completed the divergent part of the ideate step of the process? The ideas would go to the client, who would review them and begin to move through the converging part, identifying the ideas that look most promising. In the ideate step of the creative process, there's a heavy emphasis on divergent thinking. When you follow the guidelines for divergent thinking, you're going to generate many ideas, among which there'll be unusual ideas, especially if you're following the principle of seeking novelty. Ideas that are bizarre, may seem to be off the wall, deviant ideas. These have a value. It's important to allow these ideas to come out in an ideation session. Sometimes we can use them as springboards. They spur other ideas. They help to create a more relaxed atmosphere because when people hear these ideas, sometimes they laugh. There's joking that occurs often after a deviant idea or an unusual idea is shared. So it's important that we're open to all ideas, mainly because it reinforces that guideline of suspending judgment. This also helps to free us up. It creates a more relaxed environment. Often when an unusual idea is shared, there's laughter. And when the laughter occurs, people begin to relax. Also, sometimes those really novel ideas lead to a practical, workable solution. Wild ideas can also spur something that can work. Remember the honeypot story, how the idea of trained bears led eventually to the notion of using the helicopter. Here's a real example. Tom and David Kelly, founders of IDEO, a well-known design company, wrote a recent article in the Harvard Business Review. And in this article, they explored what stops people from being more creative. And in this article, they suggest the main obstacle to creativity is the fear of judgment. They use brainstorming in their sessions with their clients to address this obstacle. And they use the main principle in brainstorming, defer judgment, to overcome this fear of evaluation. Here's an example. They were recently working with Air New Zealand, and they were trying to solve the problem of making long-haul flights more comfortable for passengers. So they ran an ideation session with the executives, and they pushed on, as they say, the crazy ideas. Ideas that came up like harnessing people while they're standing, putting hammocks inside the airplane, having bunk beds, etc. This kind of thinking, as I mentioned before, creates a more relaxed atmosphere. This led eventually to the idea of a sky coach in economy. This is a heavily padded section that swings up, and then a couple can lie down comfortably together. Here are some final thoughts about brainstorming. There's a derivation of brainstorming called the nominal group technique, in which individuals brainstorm alone, and then the ideas are pooled together. Now, often nominal brainstorming will generate more ideas than group brainstorming because individuals are working separately. And then rather having to wait for each other to talk, they're free to generate as many ideas as they wish without being restrained by having to listen to others. So we have our classic brainstorming, and we have this nominal approach to brainstorming. Use what fits the situation. One of the benefits of classic brainstorming is that it encourages team building and allows for cross-fertilization of ideas because we begin to bounce off of other people's ideas. We can use them as springboards to jog our own thoughts. And when you're done brainstorming, remember, you have to converge. We've demonstrated only the divergent thinking phase of the ideate step. Remember to generally split your time roughly 50-50, or if you're working in a group environment, 40-60, spending about 60% of your time on the convergent thinking part of the ideate step. I want you to try out these tools while they're fresh. Identify a challenge statement that needs imagination. Construct a really good challenge statement using a statement starter like how to or what might. Make sure that you have a clear owner and it's free from criteria. Since the tools are new, I encourage you to begin with challenges that are less daunting. Remember the roles in a classic ideation session, that we have a facilitator, a client, and a resource group member. If you're working on a problem of your own, you might want to have someone else act as the facilitator. Provide background before the group begins in ideation. Do some kind of warm-up to get the mental muscles going. Now that you know how to conduct a real brainstorming session, in our next lecture, we'll look at more advanced tools for ideation. And I'll see you next time.